The new classifications of projects.
It just sounds like you're just renaming the...
How can you say that?
There's a hack one. Someone from the government told me, right? You don't have to confirm or deny. Like the system is rigged for.
Okay, I'm not even going to say anything about that.
Alright, so as you know, we've been recently covering all things cost of living as we gear up for the new year. We've talked about hawker prices, we talked about ride-hailing, and of course, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about housing affordability in 2025. So we invited back the best person, in our opinion, to talk about this, given her portfolios as Second Minister for National Development, as well as Second Minister for Finance. Please welcome back Minister in the Prime Minister's Office and Leader of the House, Minister Indranee Rajah. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for having me back. You sure this is not like punishment?
No,
It depends on the...
See whether we get to page 2.
It depends on perspective.
All right.
So the last time you were on, I think it was early 2023. Since then, there have been quite a number of updates with regards to the housing policy. Some of it quite clear, some of it a little bit confusing. That's why there's a lot of questions online, and we thought maybe you can help us clear the air and shed some light. I think the most notable one is on the new classifications of projects.
Yeah.
So there's standard, plus, and prime, and I no longer see any mention about mature and non-mature, or it's been reduced. So can you explain like why the introduction of the new classification?
I can, but before I do that, can you tell me what is it that's puzzling you about this? What's the main thing that you think people may not understand?
I think for one is why the need for this. Was there anything wrong with the previous way of doing it? And what's the intention behind it?
No difference lah to me. Once you come, I mean, I know there are some estates that have a longer MOP period, but beyond that, it felt like no difference. When the announcement was coming out, I thought that people living in mature estates, right, their value of their property would go down because then they lose that mature tag.
Right.
But then nothing actually happened, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
To me, it just sounds like you're just renaming the...
How can you say that?
Okay, educate me. I'm here to ask all the questions.
No reason, you know.
Exactly, that's what I need to know today.
Okay. We're doing it for a very good reason.
Okay.
In order to understand it, you actually have to go back to the fundamentals and the basics of how you value houses.
Okay.
Because the value of the house determines the price. And in the normal case, forget about HDB for the moment. How do people normally value a house? You may have heard this phrase, location. Depending on where property is located, that determines the price. So that's point number one. Point number two is, when we first started, Singapore had very small pockets of developed areas. This would have been like, Toa Payoh, Queenstown, and so on. And it had large swathes of undeveloped areas.
Right.
At that time, it would have been Woodlands, Sembawang, even Changi, right? And that led to the classification of mature, non-mature, because mature had facilities, which obviously meant that location-wise, it's closer to things that people want, which generally means prices higher. And when you build in what we call greenfield, where it's basically nothing there, then the prices are going to be lower, right?
Yeah.
It's just a function of demand and supply. That's how mature, non-mature came about, and it stood us in good stead for many years. But then over the time, when you look at our building program, our non-mature estates started to become mature.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because they got MRT stations, they got town centres, they got a whole bunch of other things. And the prices would start to go up there as well. Then it became very difficult to have this distinction between mature and non-mature because, as you say, that there wouldn't be much difference. Because
Everything will be mature.
Kind of, but what we mean by mature in this context is the facilities, the amenities. Basically, HDB's phrase for it, right, is locational attributes.
Okay.
So when you hear HDB say locational attributes, it's code word for all the things near your property that make it more expensive, or at least increase the value and the price. Because of the development of Singapore, that differentiation is starting to diminish between the old mature and the old non-mature.
Okay.
So then we looked at it and we said, then you got to find a new way to classify where you can determine what is the proper value of the flats, because you need to do that first. And then, because HDB is public housing, for BTO, then we apply a market discount. But before you can start applying market discounts and give the grants, etc., you must determine what is the baseline value of that property. So in order to do that, we introduced a new classification framework, which is based on locational attributes. Once that are likely to be the most expensive will be in prime areas. And the ones sort
Punggol.
of Tanjung Pagar, then the sort of the intermediate ones is plus, and then standard would be the majority. So over time, this mature, non-mature will just break down completely, and you'll be looking at locational attributes, and it goes across the board.
Okay, so in terms of promoting then affordability or accessibility in that sense, this new classification actually allows people to then move into what was previously known as mature estates, but probably in more discounted BTO projects, just because it's maybe not as close to an MRT.
Okay, that's topic number 2.
Okay.
Topic number 2 is affordability, accessibility, inclusivity, which is and how the new classification framework achieves this.
Okay.
So step 1 is we classify prime plus standard. Now, how are we going to make this accessible and affordable and inclusive? If you gave everybody the same subsidy, the prime one, actually, the starting value would be much higher.
Yeah.
Then the plus one is intermediate. And then you have the standard one, the value would be lower. But if you give them the same subsidy, then in order to afford the prime one, whoever is renting for that has to pay more.
Yeah.
So in order to make the prime affordable to Singaporeans from all walks of life, including middle income and so on, we would have to give more subsidy. Because if we didn't do that, it would mean that after a while, only richer Singaporeans can afford prime, then the middle income will afford plus, and then the rest will afford standard. And that will give the kind of segregation that we don't want.
Okay.
Right.
For Singapore, it's very important that we have a flat society, one that people from different backgrounds mingle together because we're all Singaporean. And that's what HDB's mission is. So for prime, which has a higher value, we will give higher subsidy, the implicit subsidy or the market subsidy.
Yeah.
But must be quid pro quo, right? Because you can't
Of course.
just because if you do that, then it's also not fair, because when, let's say, the MOP expires, you can suddenly sell your prime flat, which would jump and appreciate so much in value, whereas this person would get the same subsidy and a lesser uplift.
Yeah.
So for prime, more subsidies, but more conditions.
Okay. Such as like clawbacks of the subsidies.
Such as 10-year MOP for one.
Right.
So if you're buying prime, you must really buy because you want it for your
stay.
home. And if you're going to have kids, please check out the primary schools nearby, the prime that you choose, because by the time your kids come along, it's going to be very difficult to say, oh, I need to change place now because, I want my kid to go to a different primary school. Number 2, to make sure that when the MOP expires, and that we continue to have this inclusive mix, you cannot sell on to just anybody. You would only be able to sell to those who are eligible for BTO.
Oh.
Which means that there's a ceiling there. That right now, I think the ceiling is 14K. So it means that more middle income people, a next round of those middle income and who are eligible can afford prime flats.
Okay.
And then, of course, there will be a bit of a clawback because that uplift, right, that you get from the sale is actually you don't have to do anything. You just sit there for 10 years and assuming the country does well, our economy does well, land values go up, it will just shoot up.
Yeah.
And the other thing we were trying to guard against was the lottery effect. Because it just means that if you balloted and you're the lucky one who got it, somehow you get this big jump.
Yeah.
Social mobility.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
okay.
That's how
you-
I see it, to be honest.
Yeah, so you can see how we're trying to even it out, make it, number 1, affordable, but now number 2, more accessible to different people. And we'll also try to make sure that in all the classifications, there's some rental flats as well. Again, that social mix.
So does this mean that like in future, if let's say I buy a HDB now and it's a standard HDB, and then you talked about how like the locational amenities will improve and all that, right? Will my HDB's classification change to maybe a plus?
Ooh.
Okay, the short answer is no. I mean, if you're buying today at standard, we have to lock it in because it'd be very destabilizing for the market if your classification keeps fluctuating, right? So the answer is no. But of course, if right at the end of it, let's say the end of 99 years, the whole thing is taken back, redeveloped, and a new development comes up on that site,
It can be a plus.
Then it may be something else
something else.
depending on the locational attributes.
Okay.
Okay.
But there's also a chance where you're the only standard, and then there's like pluses growing around you.
Then you kind of know, like, you kind of know.
To their rate,
Yeah.
Right. Right.
You suddenly
Okay.
see like a new MRT pop out of nowhere and you still standard.
If I were you, I wouldn't tell him where I buy. Like,
But I know you can't comment too much about other countries, but you know, I've lived overseas for a while and I've visited friends overseas, and I think something that's always impressed me is that when I go overseas, the word public housing always has some form of negative connotation.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
in Singapore, public housing is desirable, right? I'm very
Yeah.
happy about my HDB home as well. Like I always wondered, like, how did Singapore's housing policy come to be? What was the vision and how did it all come to be essentially? Yeah.
You know, that's a really good question. And the short answer is you have to read MM's book from third world to first, because it's all in there.
Yeah.
And
I did though, but I feel like it's written in hindsight.
Yeah, because he's telling the story.
No, as in, so okay.
Well, if he wrote it right at the beginning, he wouldn't know where to land up.
If I can distill, no, as in, I feel like a lot of the way it was written feels almost to me that everything went according to plan.
It seemed inevitable.
Yeah.
Right.
But then my question would be, especially someone that has worked with, directly with MM Lee, right?
Yeah.
When Singapore began its public housing project, was it the plan that 80% of Singapore will live in a HDB?
I think they couldn't foresee that. But the one thing which the early PAP government was very determined to do was to give people homes. That was the most basic thing. Because there were many people who didn't have homes of their own. And to MM and his team, a home is kind of like that's the thing that anchors you. That's where your family is. That's what holds you to a country. So we've always seen home ownership as something which anchors Singaporeans to Singapore.
But a kampong home is a home, what?
It is, but then you also have to think about health conditions,
Right.
The conditions in which people were living, etc. So hence the housing program. But the key components of housing were simply this. Firstly, government would be the main developer. It would be subsidized housing. And it would provide a home for the family. That's the core concept. And over time, the designs have improved, etc. But we've not wavered on that. The other thing was about being united as a society. And one thing that MM and his team, and that's continued throughout, very determined to avoid was segregation.
Okay.
Which is how the colonial administration organized Singapore into, enclaves. Little India, Chinatown, Geylang Serai. And that's fine for a colonial administration. It is really not great when you're building a nation. And with a nation, you need integration. And for people to people from different races, cultures, and religions to understand each other, you need to interact on a daily basis. So the other key thing about HDB policy is making sure that it is multiracial and hence the ethnic integration program.
How do we measure the effectiveness of that? I mean, we've been doing it for 50 years, right? And for the past 50 years almost, that we've seen a degree of racial harmony. How do we know it's attributed to this, and with the absence of this, that because when someone's trying to sell and buy their HDB, right, then they might get a bit annoyed at the racial ethnic quota.
Yes,
Yeah.
I understand. There are obviously some trade-offs to that. But I think the easiest way to measure it, you're not going to be able to measure it the same way with great fine detail and come to decimal points. But maybe the easiest way for people to measure it, easiest way to see, is you look at Singapore and you look at the state of racial and religious harmony, then you look at those countries, especially in the last 10 years, where there has been divisions, uprisings,
Right.
and basically enclaves, resentment,
Right.
anger. And some of that is traceable to places where there is a very large group that has not integrated with
Right.
the others.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where other
Understand.
country life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, you measure it and you see, and I think you can see the difference.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I also not always, but often see in the news or social media about how during fasting month and then the HDB, they will have level parties or they will break fast together, that kind. And it could be a Chinese family joining the Malay family also for their breakfast and stuff. So I feel like we're in a good place.
I was so hyped for that when I got my first BTO. I thought we were going to do that. I thought we were going to block party and Chinese New Year, we just put food outside as opposed to inside.
But your neighbours not
Never. I
there.
say hi to my neighbour, they don't answer me.
Really? Okay, what are you going to do? And this is your task, right? Because we are doing forward together, collective action together. You got to organize a floor party.
Yeah,
No,
do
I
it.
don't say
He
that.
has since moved to a condo.
You can still do that.
Move to
You
private
can
plus.
still do that. You can still do that.
anywhere you live.
You can do it anywhere.
Okay. No, really, my neighbors don't say hi.
Go on,
You
say
got to
hi.
start with
I
somebody.
had one good neighbor in this one, like opposite me.
Then
Like
he
we
left.
say hi, then they moved out.
Okay. It takes the first
The
person.
rest is like good morning. Then they.
So you got to go knock on your door and like, hi, I'm your neighbor.
So I did, right? So I brought like champagne, I brought a hamper because we were gonna renovate. So I know I was gonna
Make noise.
for them.
Okay.
Yeah. And then one of them, we keep knocking and during the renovation, and they never did open the door. Then we realized it was a rental, then it was empty during that period.
Yeah.
And then the other person just opened. Then they just take like I was the parcel delivery guy.
Oh.
Then I just like, y'all did to me. I'm not gonna hold the place for you anymore.
This is so toxic.
But the opposite one, also opposite my
Yeah,
uni
yeah.
one, wow, that one is damn solid.
Oh dear,
It's always an opportunity to
Can't
have
have
a second
everything.
chance.
Yeah, you can't have everything.
Keep trying lah. You can
Yeah,
do
yeah.
You can hold up placards. Like,
Yeah. Talk to me.
Speaking of looking at data and like measuring success, right? I think when the MOP, the 10-year MOP was first introduced, I think a lot of people realized like, oh, okay, this is to reduce the competitiveness so that people who are trying to flip property don't enter. But based on the last 1.5 years, is there data to show that actually the competitiveness from these like flippers have actually reduced, or actually it's still the same? What has it looked like since this has been implemented?
the 10-year MOP was implemented only recently with the Prime, because we started Prime before we did the entire new classification.
Okay.
And so the 10 years is still running.
Okay.
And hence we wouldn't be able to say at this stage. But clearly, in a prime area with a 10-year restriction on your ability to sell it, it's obviously going to keep the demand in some control. Lah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not
okay.
as oversubscribed as it
Yes,
was
that's right.
been.
Yeah, because I think that's the primary concern. When a lot of people BTO, like previously, at least in when I was BTOing like 7 years ago, 8 years ago, it was like, oh, there's 400 units, but like 800 people have like subscribed
That's
for
right.
this. So like hopefully the
Yeah.
numbers are like
Oh,
closer
but
to.
you know that raises a good point, because it brings up something else. Why would it be so oversubscribed? And you remember the last time that I was here, one of the reasons for the pent-up demand was the fact that our construction schedule got held back.
Yeah.
Especially
And
COVID.
yeah,
Yeah.
so the supply could not keep pace with demand. Before COVID, actually we were on track. And in fact, the resale market was pretty soft. But because of COVID, we couldn't build. And then, of course, more and more people wanted flats. And once we lifted the COVID restrictions, everybody was like, okay, I want to finish my renovations. I want to move in, keep collections. But at the same time, because the workers hadn't been able to come out, we couldn't build, right? So, but I'm happy to say that we are back on track. Between 2021 2025, we will be able to launch 100,000 flats.
It's a lot of flats.
At the same time, we've said that we're going to build more. So the ones that you saw in the newspapers the other day, Turf City at Bukit Timah,
Yep.
that's not even counted in the 100,000. And that's going to have quite a lot coming up.
Okay.
And the third thing is shorter waiting time flats. Because you know, during COVID, obviously the waiting time was very long. Now it's come back to normal, but we're trying to see how we can speed up the construction to make sure that you have your flats in a shorter period.
Okay.
It just affects all your proposal timelines. Man. Serious. Y'all must think through. Because
People can get married
we
faster.
BTO just to test the system. Because everybody
Oh,
say,
yeah.
not so easy get one. You gotta usually do 2-3 times and you get right.
We closed that loophole. So.
No, but this was so long. I was 23, I think. Then my wife and I is like, let's just, I mean my girlfriend then, right?
Okay.
Let's just test and then see we need like what. You know, maybe as we do the form, because I remember got like 11, like next, you might press that about 11 times, right? To get to submit. So we just thought we're just going to find out what we need. Then like,
First time.
we were not going to pay the $11 one, you know, but Pat is like,
That's
it's
right.
only $11.
only.
So we try, I won't get one.
Probably
Get.
So how has
Okay.
the loopholes been closed?
Well, see, so it's people like you that led to the
Ay,
next
yeah,
policy
John.
that I'm going to talk about.
What do you mean? We got married.
Okay, so that was a good thing. That was a good thing. But the ones who are applying fall into different categories. One will be like yourself, fiancés, I suppose.
Very much in love.
Yeah, in love, planning to get married,
Young.
not married yet.
Okay.
Then you have those who just married, no kids, and then you have those married and with a young kid. So when we looked at these three groups, we said that, you know, of the three groups, I I think we have to give priority to the married couples with young kids as well as those just married because they obviously want to start family. So you're still, people who would be in your position are still in the priority queue, but the other two groups get additional priority.
Oh, so they have higher. So they have higher chances.
Yeah, they have high chances. They get additional priority.
Oh, okay. Because I
We
remember
introduced that I think one year ago.
I think with that I wanted to dive into a couple of specific questions that we had both as follow-up questions to the episode that we did, but also on our Telegram community. I think there have been some updates to like the grants and schemes as well. Are you able to shed some light on what are the available grants now and what does that look like for young couples?
So basically, the idea is to make housing more affordable and accessible, and hence we did enhance the grants. But we also wanted to have certain targeted grants. So we were trying to encourage people to consider resale as well.
Okay.
So we did have an enhanced grant for the resale market.
Nice.
And for the resale flats, singles would be able to benefit from that.
Right.
Min Desmond announced it, I think, just recently, which is the family care scheme.
Right.
Because the feedback that we kept coming was, I want to live near my parents, or the parents say, I want to live near my children because I'm getting older, I need my children's support.
Right. Yeah.
Or the children who are young children getting married and have kids, want the grandparents to look after the grandchildren.
And the country
right?
wants that for them, right?
Yes, that's right. So we've always had the proximity access for family, but now we have enhanced that.
Wow.
So basically, in the past, that only applied to married children. So now we've extended the proximity access. So long as your parents and child, then you get proximity access whether or not your child is married or single.
Oh.
Because a lot of singles were coming and
see.
telling us that,
Right.
I'm the one who's single and I'm the one who's looking after
Yeah.
our parents
That's true.
because
That's
my married
true.
siblings,
Yeah.
Okay.
Have to take
can't
up
do
their
it.
own children.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
Okay.
And then they can also get priority when they do joint balloting. Parents can ballot for one in that development, and then the children can ballot for another unit. And because they're doing it as a family, they can get priority access.
Wow.
Okay. So
That's
two separate units, but
cool.
within the same estate,
Yeah,
essentially.
I mean, there are various
Neighbours.
configurations. I won't go through all of them in
the guy that
detail.
sit at the HDB
But the bottom
counter
line is where you're trying to make it all more family friendly.
Yeah,
and you're
yeah.
trying to enable families to live closer to each other for mutual support.
Someone asked, so they were very curious because if I'm not mistaken, the down payment for a HDB loan has been increased. So it used to be 15%, then it got increased to 20%, and now I think it's about 25%. I think they're wondering like why the increase when the new updates is meant to help housing affordability. It seemed counterintuitive.
It's also really to help people plan more prudently, and it's an indication of seriousness.
what is the issue the government is trying to overcome by increasing down payment again? What was the issue we faced?
I mean, if you make it the down payment too low and too easy, then
Yeah.
in a market where the supply was overheating,
Right.
exceeding the demand, then you're going to have more people rushing in. So you're kind of like cooling down the demand
I
a
see.
bit. But at the same time, you're also asking people to think quite seriously about
Yeah.
this. And do you have the finances to embark on something as serious as getting what is probably the largest asset in your life, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's probably meant to work on two fronts. One is to avoid someone like John who is just applying on a whim just to try, and then the second is also similar to the whole
Why am I being
like the extended MOP to like trying to reduce that
Yeah.
competitiveness from people who are
That's
just
right.
viewing this as an
I would say
investment.
I
Yes.
walked this path and helped a lot of young people get houses.
Hey, no, my wife and I were similar. So like we just wanted to try because we heard of somebody trying for 10 times and not get it. So we thought the probability is 1 in
Lower.
11.
There's a hack one. Some from the government told me, right? You don't have to confirm or deny, but some from the government told me, right? If you are applying in the past was non-matured, by the third time you sure get one. Like the system is rigged for you to sure get it.
Not so much that
Not from I say one, not minister say one.
No, that one is more a function of demand and supply, simply because the non-matured generally less popular, the mature more popular.
Yeah.
So if you're applying more times for less popular area, you're more likely to get it.
The probability will work in your favor.
Yeah.
Sure get.
It'll be like Toto. Someone asked, can I really afford a house if I've just graduated or graduated not long ago?
2 points about that, right?
Okay.
If you're a young person, I mean, one, we've obviously introduced this new schemes like the deferred income assessment, because basically rather than looking at what you're actually earning now, we look at what you potentially could earn, and we let you have the flat. But in the future, when you have your income, then we assess and that's fine. So in a way, it allows those who are in university and at an earlier stage to be able to buy the flat earlier. I would also say that for young people just starting out, and in Singapore, it is affordable. It is affordable depending on doing on a few things. One, you must have some savings of your own. The other part is CPF. Because as you earn your salary, a portion goes into your CPF, and by law that we have mandated and put in place, your employer must also contribute to your CPF. That goes into your CPF account, which can also be used for your housing. And then you've got the loan part, and depending on your income, you can either get a loan from HDB, or if you're above a certain income, then you have to take a commercial loan. But still, for the loan part, again, the repayment for the loan can be made out of your CPF. And then, of course, this part is not within young people's control, but there's the government intervention. So sometimes we will step in with market cooling measures, or we'll give additional grants, and so on. So young people should remember that these 4 components. And when you put these components together, housing can actually be very affordable for young Singaporeans. So as HDB often mentions, there are many Singaporeans who are actually able to buy a flat with very little cash outlay, and in some cases with almost no cash outlay because it's mostly coming out of the CPF. Depends on your budget. So I can't give you an absolute number, but it depends on how much your flat costs, depends on your income and so on. But the key message I want to put across is, don't go buy a house because you think it's possible to do this with very little cash outlay. Go and buy a house because you've sat down, you've thought about it, you've worked out the pricing, and you know that this is what you can afford and how much you can afford. I think that's the key thing.
And you found your partner lah.
But no, singles can buy also.
No, when you're young, man.
When you're fresh lah.
But just talking about singles, because under the new classification framework, because before singles could only buy BTO in non-mature estates. Under the new classification framework, they can buy island-wide.
Oh!
Yes.
You are in a relationship. What are you talking about?
But this is for 2-room flexi lah. Because if singles want to buy larger than that, then they have to buy on resale market. But if you've got a fiance, then you can.
No, I'm considered single.
She's working on it.
Okay.
I'm working on it.
Why are singles only able to get flexi? Because I understand when I first heard of the flexi system, it was for almost retirees, right? They don't require a 99-year lease. I'm assuming that's what the flexi means, right? The term of the lease.
Yes and no. So
let's get schooled.
Some of y'all go to FAQs, we just invite the minister.
It's true that when they first started out, the 2-room was intended for seniors, and at that time I think we called them studio apartments.
Yes.
After 2011, do you remember Corbin Wan was the Minister for National Development?
Yes.
So he was looking at this whole situation, and he was also looking at the request for singles to be able to buy. And then he said, well, singles obviously don't need such large flats as the married couples because they don't have children, etc. And then he said, well, we've already got 2-room, but it would not make much sense to have a 2-room for seniors and a 2-room for singles. So why don't we just make it flexible, hence 2-room flexi? That's how it came about.
What's not the term?
It's flexi because it started out as for one group, but now it's flexible because it can extend to others.
I want to remove my question.
Keep it in because a lot of people might have the same misconception that you do. So I think that's
people
good.
are misled. Guys, I want to correct everybody at once.
All right, so the next question we had was from someone who says, okay, I'm in NS right now and understanding the EHG, I will get a bigger loan if my income is smaller. So wouldn't the deferred income assessment work against me given that I am more likely to have more income later on? Ooh.
He basically has 2 choices. He can try for the deferred income assessment scheme, or he can just go the normal route.
Okay.
Under the deferred income assessment scheme, for your loan eligibility, right, and how much loan you can get, they won't assess you based on what your income is today, which may be less, but they will assess you before the flat is completed, by which time your income would have increased, hopefully. So if you have higher income, you generally can get higher loan. So it may be true that he may get a slightly lesser grant because our grants are also tiered according to income, but it balances out. You get less grant, larger loan.
And vice versa.
And
Right.
vice versa.
Okay.
And of course, if he chooses to apply now and not use the deferred income assessment, again, they have to assess based on his income and his eligibility, but he may get a larger grant but a smaller loan.
Okay, so
Right.
the main point here is that actually the deferred income assessment, you get the flexibility, you can
It's
choose.
optional lah.
Yeah.
And it's only whether it works to your advantage, because if you try and get assessed by your income today, you may not even be eligible for a loan to begin with.
Yeah, because it really depends on what your circumstances are.
So what I'm reading
okay,
between the lines, right, is that if your parents got money
Yeah, I was thinking exactly that.
and you found your partner, yeah, you should do it during NS. Then get the maximum grant, then lower loan, then pay off more cash.
I'm not even going to
But
say
like-
anything about that. That'd be a good idea to sort of work out your own finances first.
yeah,
You know,
of
your
course, of
parents
course.
need something for retirement. Think about it that way.
You spoke about uplift like very briefly at the start. Like how much of that is an intentional thing that the government wants to help achieve for a lot of like mid-income to low-income families? That uplift when you know the the locational amenities start to increase and the value of a property actually rises.
You're talking about the flip.
The unintentional flip, like you
Yeah.
did buy for your family, but then you realize, oh my gosh, the value of the property is now twice.
Yeah.
And like,
It's the other way around, because the way you put the question suggests that, you know, we let you buy the flat, then we deliberately do a lot of things so that you can get an uplift. That's not usually the way we approach it.
Okay.
We approach it from a town planning perspective. We've built the BTO, you've got this precinct there. Then we ask ourselves, you know, what are the things that we need to do? In some cases, there are amenities already there. But if it's new, right, you're going to need childcare. You're going to make sure that there's transport nodes, shopping malls, the whole bunch of things. And you're putting that there for people's convenience and because you're trying to build a town and community. But once that goes there, then obviously it becomes more valuable.
Yep.
And that's where the uplift kicks in.
Okay,
So
okay.
the uplift
But if you
is
don't
a
do much,
consequence.
also uplift one,
No lah. I mean, there are places where, you know, over time, if you do nothing, if they become run down, if your transport nodes start to disappear from there, the reverse will happen. But we try very, very hard not to let that happen. That's why we went through the whole long-term plan review, and now we're working on the draft master plan. Basically, renewing, rejuvenating, making sure we got city and nature. You know, all
Quite
of this.
fun also, like,
next
yeah,
time.
right.
yeah. Okay.
Is it still fun for you? Like after doing this for so long?
The good thing is that you're always learning something new every day. And there are new challenges which crop up and you've got to find new solutions.
I feel like it's so shock. Like, you know, a lot of singles come and tell me that they want to live near their parents because they want to take care of their parents. Like, yeah, that makes sense. I'll make it happen. Like, wow, that's crazy.
Right. Yeah. What was it? Was this due to a lot of feedback? Because I mean, I think there's a huge shift in like allowing singles to have more accessibility to homes. Was that mainly because of this? Like singles wanting to take care of their parents?
That was one of the reasons. An interesting thing happened after COVID. Not entirely sure why, but maybe because people were really forced to live together for a long time. But we did see a significant jump in demand by singles after COVID.
To move out lah.
To have a place of their own.
Right.
I think after COVID, people just really valued their own space.
Privacy,
So
yeah.
even without having to do anything, there was just a jump in demand from the single side post-COVID. That's one. But the other is they didn't just want a flat of their own. Many of them who have aging parents want to live near their parents.
Okay, so move out but still live near.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
Well, in some cases, they had already moved out, done something else or whatever, but now want to move back closer to the parents.
This one's quite interesting. So, what someone asked, why doesn't HDB limit public housing transactions? So, like selling back your current HDB flat back to HDB, like wouldn't that then dampen resale prices?
Yo, bro, what are you trying to do, bro?
Yeah.
I don't understand the question. That means they're trying to sell it back to.
So I think that
HDB.
they're saying clearly on the news, we always hear about like the crazy prices that HDBs are going for. And this is because like basically you can sell it back to the market.
Yeah.
But if the goal is to ensure that houses are
Low.
affordable,
Yeah,
then
affordable.
why doesn't HDB do a buyback scheme instead?
Ah.
It's an idea that has been tossed up. But if we could do that, we're your only buyer
Right.
and we set the price.
Oh.
And people are not going to like that most likely.
Yes. So
Instead, we play Deepri, not appreciation.
So right now, the way it's designed is that when you sell, you will get some uplift. And for many people, that makes a difference because it either allows them to upgrade, or in some cases, especially if they're senior, then you can sell and then move to a smaller unit, and you can use the surplus proceeds as part of your retirement funds.
Last question from our community. We briefly touched upon it, but how is the government adapting to changing housing needs and lifestyles, and how is HDB innovating for the future?
Yeah, that's keeping us really busy. Because when we first started out, it was like, okay, just build a standard home and everybody takes pretty much the same thing.
Yep.
And over time, we found that people had different wants, different needs. But the greatest challenge for us now is aging population.
Yeah.
So not just aging population, but a falling TFR.
Total fertility rate.
Yeah, that's right. For the seniors, we're exploring new housing typologies. We started out with the community care apartments, and those proved to be very popular. But it's not going to be possible to sort of cover the whole island with community care apartments. And don't forget, by 2030, about 1 in 4 or 25% of our population is going to be age 65 and above.
Wow.
So even as you have community care apartments, we are exploring new typologies for seniors. But we're also making a big push for aging in place. Seniors do like to live in the same area because they're familiar. So one possibility is to make sure that the facilities, you have more active aging centers, make sure that you have polyclinics nearby, medical facilities, etc. And also they have the option to sell off their unit and get a smaller one. Then they can stay in the same area, hopefully, and at the same time enjoy amenities. So we have to plan for an aging population. At the same time, you have the other, the opposite end of the spectrum, which is the singles. So we have to think of what can we do for singles. We've made some moves. Our biggest challenge is land constraints. When we're balancing between land constraints, we give priority to families, but we recognize that singles too have aspirations. So we'll have to think of, what kind of moves we can make for them.
Speaking of land constraints, so I mentioned that was the last question, but something that was very intriguing was how is land cost factored into HDB pricing?
Well, it isn't factored in when we price it to sell. I want you to put yourself in the mindset of a big-time developer. Okay?
Yeah.
So you're a big-time developer,
Yeah,
and you've got this piece of land which you've had to buy for, let's say, $1 billion, right? So when you develop on this land, are you going to try and recover your land cost or not?
Yeah, for sure.
Are you going to try and make a profit element?
For sure.
Okay, so whatever it is, you'll factor in the land cost and you'll add a big markup, right?
Yeah.
And make as much profit as you can.
Yeah.
And that's
And make
because...
small units.
Yes.
Many of it.
Yeah. And that's because you're a private developer.
Yeah.
But HDB takes a different approach. The government requires us to behave in a prudent way. All the land that we have, the land that we're going to build on, belongs to Singaporeans,
Yeah.
right? So when HDB buys the land, we say you have to buy at market value.
Oh, HDB needs to buy the land.
Yeah.
It's not just like from reserve, we just skim back in 99 years.
So some people just like, okay, it's left hand, right hand. Why don't you just, it's government land, I'll just give it to you. But don't forget, the way the government sees it is that land belongs to you.
Right.
So if I go and give it to HDB for free, I'm shortchanging you because that land belongs to our reserves, and our reserves belong to you. So if HDB is going to build on this land, it has to buy it from the government.
Like a developer would.
Okay.
Right?
Like a developer would, and it will buy it at market value. I mean, there's a valuation process. So now HDB would have paid the full price. Actually, MND would be providing money for HDB to pay that. So now HDB has got this piece of land which it paid the market value for. But we also know that if we did what you would have done as a private developer.
As any private developer would have done.
Fair enough. Then most Singaporeans will not be able to afford because they'll be effectively selling like private property. So what HDB then does is it applies, after it's built, etc., it applies a significant market discount. And the price at which we sell the units is already a discounted price. So it means HDB absorbs that amount.
Before
So
all
how
the
do we
grants.
derive that discount? So for example, do you say you value it with the land cost in mind? Then after that, there's a substantial
We
discount?
will look at what is the market value and that is determined, according to locational attributes. And then after that, HDB has its own internal way of assessing, and then it works backwards and brings it down.
Right.
It takes into account various factors, but one of the things it does take into account is what can most Singaporeans afford. Because
Right.
you can say that, I apply a discount of $10,000. That's not going to work, right?
Yeah.
It has to apply a discount which is big enough to make sure that it's affordable. So affordability is one of the factors that we take into account.
The houses that we are building today and we're subsidizing Singaporeans today, it's not at the expense of reserve, but at the expense of the government's operating budget, is it?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I was thinking like who pays for this in the end? Well,
Yeah,
okay.
ultimately the government pays for it.
Okay.
So do we have any clarity what happens after 99 years? Is it someone just going to knock my door and then it's like, give
Move
back?
out.
House gone.
We have a plan for that. It's called VERS. SM Lee talked about it in his National Day rally,
that one.
which you are totally familiar with, I'm sure.
Yeah, 2000 and something. Yeah.
The flat is sold for 99 years. At the end of the 99 years, the lease comes to an end, so it reverts back to the HDB and to the government. And then we'd said that, well, for some, you sell back before the 99 years.
Right.
In his NDR, SM said that we can look at it maybe around 70-year mark. That means before it totally runs down.
Right.
On a voluntary basis, the residents there can sell back to the government, which then means that the government can take back the land to redevelop. And those who have sold back to the government, first they will have some money from that.
Yeah.
And then we will look at how they can become eligible to buy new flats.
Okay. Fair
And in between, because 70 years is quite a long time, he mentioned that, we will also have to look at HIP, because as you get the spoiling concrete, your pipes and so on, then you might have to do at least two HIPs in a 70-year cycle.
So there are options so that it won't get to a point where 99 years like poof, like
It might not, to be honest, when all of us buy the house, we will really sign to say at 99 years later, poof, it's gone. It's just that, right?
Yeah.
It's just that,
I mean,
cannot be government not so, you guys, you give me something, right?
but they're clearly like
No, I mean,
schemes
it's
and-
like if you buy private, right? 99, you know that at the end of that 99, you would be,
Yeah.
that was the end
The
of it.
developer not going to take care of you, son.
sell
Yeah,
out
well,
ahead of time.
So we're working on the VERS scheme.
Okay. All right, guys, so that's all the time we have today. Thank you so much to Minister Indranee Rajah for joining us and for shedding some light, enlightening us. So hope that answers a lot of the questions that you might have about housing affordability. If you haven't yet subscribed, do join us as we approach more topics about cost of living on the road to GE. We'll see you next one. Like, share, subscribe. Bye-bye.
Did you check out the HDB apa tu
No,
TikTok?
I didn't.
You did not.
I want to
Are you
see
inside?
it.
Yeah, let's do our reaction.
This one was my idea. This one was my idea.
Oh,
I want to see.
I'm so excited now.
See, standard flats plus flats.
So cute.
Were you
Yeah.
literally there directing this?
And prime. Yeah. And so all the information that you need is on this video.
Okay.
So cute.
Okay.
It really shows how the HDB logo didn't age well, when the modern video then part the logo.